At some point, the role ends. Not always suddenly, not always by choice, but sometimes it ends because the body won't cooperate anymore. Sometimes because life shifts, and sometimes because the cost becomes clearer than the benefit. But when the role ends, what remains is not immediately clear. There's a particular quality that usually starts a week after you stopped. You wake up, and nothing is pulling on you. No message you need to check, no version of yourself you need to prepare, no one waiting. The day is open, completely open. And instead of relief, there's something else. A kind of stillness that doesn't feel restful yet. The body is awake, but it doesn't know what to do with the quiet. It reaches for something to respond to, and finds nothing. Not nothing as in empty, nothing as in not yet. The shape of the day is there, but the content hasn't arrived. And you lie there for a moment, not knowing if that is freedom or just the absence of what used to organize you. That moment, that particular disorienting quiet, is where this episode begins. As the creator of the Psychology for Escort framework and the founder of Psychologists for Escort, I help exceptional women understand the psychological impact of their work. This episode is not about what comes next. It's about what is left when structure is gone. And what becomes possible when you stop trying to fill in. Throughout this series, we talked about adaptation, about fantasy, contracts, dissociation, power, boundaries, stopping. All of these processes organize identity. They tell you who you are by telling you what is required. When requirements disappear, identity doesn't instantly reassemble. It pauses. And in that pause, what becomes visible is not emptiness. What becomes visible is structure. The structure that once held everything together. Because identity was never only a story in the mind. It lived in patterns, in reactions, in the body. And the clearest place we can see this is in roles. Roles are not just things you do. They shape posture, the way your shoulders rest, the way your chest opens or protects, the way your head tilts when you listen. They shape tone, how softly you speak, how confidently you enter a conversation, how quickly you apologize, how easily you take space. They shape attention, what you notice in a room, what you scan first, where your eyes land, what you prepare for. Roles are not behaviors. They are nervous system patterns. They organize how you enter rooms, whether you arrive alert, charming, on display, or cautious, measuring energy, reading faces. They organize how you relate, how close you allow people, how quickly you adapt, how much of yourself you reveal. They organize how you hold yourself in the world. What feels safe to want? What feels allowed to feel? What feels dangerous to show? Over time, the role becomes familiar. Not because it's authentic, but because it is rehearsed. Every interaction repeats it. Every day strengthens it. Every response confirms it. The body learns it. The muscles remember it. The breath adjusts to it. The nervous system predicts through it. Eventually, the role feels like you. Not because it was who you were born as, but because it was who you practiced being. I remember the moment I realized I couldn't tell the difference anymore. Someone asked me what I was like in the bedroom. Not what I did, what I was like. And I went blank. I had always been a reflection of my client's desire. I didn't know what was mine. I had 100 answers about what I could do. And I couldn't find a single one about who I was when I wasn't doing any of it. Because the role had become that complete, that rehearsed. And rehearsal creates stability, predictability, control, safety. Even when the role was exhausting, even when it required effort, even when it cost emotional energy, it still offered structure. You knew how to act. You knew how to respond. You knew how to survive within it. The role told you who to be, who to attract, what to tolerate, how to succeed. So when the role existed, it wasn't just work. It was a psychological home, a system of meaning, a system of identity, a system of orientation. And letting go of that role means letting go of that stability. Not just changing behavior, but losing the structure that once organized your world. It means the body no longer knows automatically how to enter rooms, how to read people, how to position itself. It means attention feels unanchored. There is space where certainty used to live. And that space can feel like anxiety, confusion, emptiness. Not because something is wrong, but because a practiced identity has dissolved. The nervous system is between patterns, no longer in the old one, and not yet in the new self. This in-between is where many women feel lost. Not weak, not broken, just temporary without structure. The role once held posture, tone, attention, identity. And now the body is learning how to exist without it. This is not regression, this is reorganization. The system is searching for a new coherence, a new way of being, a new rhythm, a new sense of self. And until that forms, the absence of the role can feel like losing who you were. But what is actually happening is the emergence of who you are becoming. After the role falls away, there's often a strange quiet. Not relief, not grief, just space. A space where structure used to live. A space where urgency once existed. A space where attention was constantly pulled outward. And space can feel unsettling. When you have been oriented by demand, when your body was trained to respond, to anticipate, to prepare, to perform. Demand creates rhythm. It told you when to wake up, when to be alert, when to be present, when to rest. So, when demand disappears, the nervous system doesn't immediately relax. It notices absence first. And the body asks quietly, where do I go now? What matters when nothing is required? This is where many women feel lost, without being distressed, not panicked, not broken, just unanchored. Time feels wider, days feel less defined, energy feels available, but not directed. And that can feel like emptiness, not because life is meaningless, but because meaning was previously organized externally, by demand, by response, by being wanted. When those disappear, the system enters a neutral zone. This is not failure, this is transition. The nervous system is recalibrating, learning how to choose instead of respond, learning how to feel value without reflection. This quiet is not a void, it's a reset, a clearing of old patterns, a space where a new self will eventually take shape. But first, there's stillness. Not peace yet, just neutrality. And neutrality can feel uncomfortable when intensity used to define life. But flat doesn't mean empty. It means the nervous system is lowering its baseline, returning toward balance. That confusion is not a problem. It's a necessary phase between who you were in the role and who you are becoming beyond it. Many women assume that once the role ends, the self should simply return, that she would feel like herself again, be the way she was before, that identity should reappear on its own. But identity doesn't work like that. It was never stored away. It was built. And what is built through repetition dissolves without it. Identity is assembled through interaction, through being responded to, through how people look at you, through what they expect from you, through how you adjust and position yourself. Every response reinforces a version of you. Confidence grows when it's mirrored. Attractiveness grows when it's rewarded. Attentiveness grows when it's rewarded. Performance grows when it's valued. Over time, these patterns solidify. They begin to feel like personality, but they're actually relational habits. Identity is not something you own. It is something that emerges between you and the world. So when those responses stop, identity becomes quieter, not erased, just less referenced, less activated, less reinforced moment by moment. The mirrors that once defined you are gone. The feedback loop have stopped. The reference that once said, "This is who you are no longer speaking. So the system goes quiet, not broken, not lost, just between identities. This is why the question, "Who am I now?" is not meant to be answered quickly. Because identity is not rebuilt through thinking. It's rebuilt through living. Through new rhythms, through new interactions, through new choices repeated over time. A new self doesn't appear suddenly. It forms gradually, moment by moment, as life begins to mirror different parts of you. And this in-between phase can feel uncomfortable, because there's less definition, less certainty, less automatic sense of who you are. But this is not a void, it's a rebuilding phase. And it cannot be rushed, because identity returns not through answers, but through experience, through repetition, through being lived into existence again. At this point, many women feel an urge to replace the role with something else, a new structure, a new identity, a new way of being wanted, a new rhythm to organize the days, a new purpose to anchor energy, a new system that tells the body where to go, what to focus on, who to be. This urge is understandable, because structure feels safer than openness. Structure offers certainty, predictability, a sense of direction. Openness feels undefined, unstructured, without clear boundaries yet. And the nervous system prefers what is known, even when the known was exhausting, even when it required constant effort. Because familiarity feels like safety. So the system looks for something new to hold on to, something to organize life again, something to replace the lost rhythm. This is why many women move quickly into new roles, a new relationship, a new career identity, a new lifestyle structure, a new way of being valued, a new way of being needed. Not because they are true to the self, but because they offer immediate structure. They provide mirrors again, feedback, a sense of self. But replacing the role too quickly often recreates the same dynamics. Different context, same organization. The same intensity, the same over-adaptation, the same performance-based identity, the same nervous system patterns. The system simply transfers the structure from one role to another, from one environment to the next, without ever resting in openness, without ever discovering who you are without demand, without ever allowing a new rhythm to emerge naturally. This is why quick replacements often feels exciting at first. They bring clarity back, direction back, energy back. But over time, the same exhaustion returns. The same pressure rebuilds. The same loss of self quietly forms again. Not because the new role is wrong, but because it was entered from urgency, not from choice. It was chosen to fill space, not to express self. And this is the subtle trap of transition. The mind looks for clarity, the body looks for structure, and together they rush towards something familiar, even if it wears a different name. True rebuilding requires staying in openness a little longer, allowing the nervous system to settle, letting identity reorganize slowly, feeling without immediately feeling, being without immediately becoming. And this phase is uncomfortable, but it is where genuine change happens, where new patterns can form, where choice replaces reaction, where life begins to organize around inner rhythms instead of external demand. The temptation to replace the role is not weakness, it's the nervous system seeking safety. But safety doesn't come from another structure. It comes from learning to exist without one for a while. This is how a new self slowly emerges. Not through rushing into the new next identity, but through allowing space to reshape you. And when space is finally allowed, something unexpected appears. Not chaos, not emptiness, but a quieter form of strength. A presence that was always there beneath the roles. Which brings us to what remains when you don't rush. If you don't rush, something else becomes visible. Not a new identity, not a new role, not a new direction yet, but a capacity. A quiet capacity, a subtle one. The capacity to be present without performing. To sit in a moment without preparing. without anticipating response, without adjusting yourself to be received, to relate without managing, without monitoring energy, without reading reactions, without shaping yourself to fit expectations, to feel without being oriented by demand, without scanning for what is needed, without tying worth to usefulness. This capacity is subtle. It doesn't demand attention. It doesn't create urgency. It simply appears in quiet moments, in pauses, in stillness, in the absence of expectation. And it's easy to overlook, because it doesn't announce itself. There's no rush of excitement, no dramatic clarity, no sudden sense of purpose. It feels almost ordinary, calm, neutral. I noticed this first on a walk. Nothing special, just the street I had walked 100 times. And I realized I wasn't preparing for anything. I wasn't reading the people I passed. I wasn't trying to hide from them either. I wasn't adjusting. I was just there, walking. And it felt so remarkable that I almost didn't notice it. Except that afterward, I felt more like myself than I had in years. Not because something had happened, because nothing was required. But within that neutrality is freedom. Freedom from constant adaptation. Freedom from performance. Freedom from reaction. This is nervous system learning rest. This is the psyche discovering presence. This is the foundation of a new self forming quietly. Not built on demand, not built on response, but built on being. This capacity grows slowly, with time, with gentleness, with repeated moments of simply existing. And the more space you allow, the clearer it becomes. It is not emptiness. This is presence returning, not as performance, but as peace. Not announced, not dramatic, just quietly, undeniably there. So, who are you now? Not as a role, not as a function, not as an outcome, not as what you provide, not as how you are received, not as what you produce in others. Those definitions are loosening. Not because they were wrong, but because they were borrowed. Borrowed from a context that organized everything. How you moved, how you were valued, how you understood yourself. And now that context is gone, or loosening, and the self that was organized around it is reorganizing too. This is not crisis, and it's not a failure. It is what happens when a practiced identity reaches the end of its context. The role dissolves, and what is left is not nothing, but it is also not yet fully formed. You are between organizations, between old patterns and new rhythms, between who you were trained to be and who you are learning to become. And between structures, there is something that was always there, underneath the role, underneath the performance, underneath the efficiency and the adaptation. A capacity to notice, to feel, to be affected by things, to want something quietly, without it being useful to anyone. That capacity didn't disappear during the work. It was set aside, deprioritized, made secondary to what was required. But it was never lost. And in the quieter moments now, it begins to return. Not dramatically, not as a sudden clarity, but as small signals. A moment of genuine interest in something. A preference that arises without needing to be performed. A feeling that belongs only to you. Not directed at anyone. Not useful to anyone. Just present. These signals are quiet, easy to dismiss. After years of responding to strong external demand, internal signals can feel faint by comparison, almost uncertain, as if they might not be trustworthy yet. But they are the beginning of something. Not a new identity fully formed, not a clear direction, just the first indications of an orientation that comes from inside, rather than from outside. And this is not a small thing. After years of external organization, an internal signal is significant, even when it's quiet, even when it's uncertain, even when it doesn't yet know where it is pointing. So, who are you now? You are someone whose old organization is dissolving, and whose new one is not yet settled. You are someone whose internal signals are beginning to return, faintly, uncertainly, but present. You are not behind, you are not broken, you are not starting from nothing. You are starting from what the role couldn't take from you. The capacity to notice, to feel, to want something that belongs only to you. That it's not a small starting point. It is the only one that matters. And it has been there all along, waiting. Not for the right moment, not for the right circumstances, for the quiet. For the space that appears when the role no longer fills everything. That space is now here, and what grows in it will be more fully yours than anything the role could provide. This series doesn't end with answers. It ends with awareness. Because awareness is where choice quietly becomes possible. Not dramatic choice, not sudden transformation, but small moments of noticing. Noticing when you perform, noticing when you adapt, noticing when you respond from old patterns, and noticing when you don't. These moments are where change begins. Not by forcing a new identity, but by allowing a new way of being to grow, slowly, gently, in your own rhythm. There's nothing you need to become right now, nothing you need to fix, nothing you need to replace. There's only space to notice, and in that space, life begins to reorganize itself naturally. So take your time. Let the quiet work. Let presence settle. And trust that who you are becoming is already unfolding. At some point, you will notice your shoulders drop. Not because you decided to relax them, but because nothing is asking them to hold anymore. That moment, quiet, unremarkable, physical, is what this series has been moving toward. Not a conclusion, just a breath. yours.